right. Welcome. Happy Friday. Thank you so much for joining us. Super excited for this chat with Carrie. For those of you that have been kind of like seeing my messages, I've been talking as loud as I can when it comes to freelancing and the benefits that you get from freelancing, especially as a new developer. And it was how I got my break. So I'm super excited for this particular talk with Carrie. Carrie's got, almost 15 years of experience.
Yeah, something like that. Been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, so she's been doing this for a very, very long time and started off actually in Amazon as a QA analyst. And her journey has kind of like she's been doing lots of different things over the last 15 years, but most of it has been in project management and program manager. And one of the things that I loved about your profile on LinkedIn was how you call yourself the human fire blanket.
Yeah, that was actually, it came about because one of my former bosses, we were trying to figure out, going through the annual write your job description thing that you have to do for corporations. And I had developed a bit of a name for just being thrown at every fire at the company. It's like, if it's on fire, throw Carrie at it. She'll figure it out. And so I asked her, so how do I put human fire blanket in my job description? She was like, just use that. So it actually ended up in my job description, and I've carried the tagline with me through my freelancing.
I love that. You know, it actually kind of it's interesting. I know this is a completely different segue, but it's an interesting opener when you see that on someone's LinkedIn, as opposed to full stack developer, pipe, JavaScript, pipe, Python, pipe, Node, pipe. And it's like, okay, I get it. These are the languages that you know. So I like to see when I see a little bit of personality on the tag rather than a list of just the skills you have. I thought that was really neat. Yeah, so guys, I'm super excited to bring Carrie on. Carrie, I know you have an introduction slide, so I'm not going to take away from that. But Carrie has a 21-inch camper van that I'm personally super excited about because I'm a big just camper geek. I love watching camper, like just van builds. So I would love to geek out about that side of your life and just kind of how you got into it. Maybe towards later on the session. But let's get started about freelancing and an introduction to freelancing.
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Navi. Yeah, we actually will see my van. It's 21 foot long. We will see it as a part of the presentation. So stay tuned for that.
Awesome.
It looks like Adam has a 28-foot trailer. So that's pretty awesome. Anybody who can live the van life is pretty cool. So let's get into freelancing. Freelancing and travel sometimes go hand in hand, sometimes they don't. And I'll talk about that later. The subtitle on this is how to become a freelancer without losing your mind, because one thing I didn't realize when I got into it was there's a lot more that goes into freelancing than just simply doing your job. And I'll get into that later. But real quickly, we'll go, table of contents. Who am I? What is freelancing? Talk about some misconceptions, types of work. How to managing expectations is something that I'm actually going to reserve a fair amount of time for, because I think this is 80 to 90% of what I do on a daily basis is managing expectations, myself and my clients. And it's really, really important to set expectations correctly all around. Otherwise, you will lose your mind. If you have any questions as I go through, feel free to interject. I'd love to make this as conversational as you guys are willing to make it. So drop a note in the chat. Hopefully Navi will help me see those if I don't see them right away, and I'll answer questions as we go. So who am I? Carrie Drayling. I started my own company in 2015 called New Start PM Consulting Services. I actually tried to get a little too cute in the beginning and incorporated it under Nova Status, which means new start in Latin. Nobody could pronounce it. Nobody could remember it. So I did go through a rebranding to make it a little more memorable. And that's one of my tips is don't get too cute. Don't out cutesy yourself. You need to be memorable, but people need to be able to pronounce your business name and remember what you do. As I kind of alluded to, my niche is really helping clients figure out how to get back on track. As the human fire blanket, I'm often brought in when projects or companies are completely off the rails. They usually have a third party that they're working with. So I think under my superpower, it's client whisperer. They usually have a third party that's extremely upset. Nobody's happy, nobody's coming out at the table. And so they bring me in to calm things down, get everybody back on track, reset expectations, and get going again. That's really fun. I do also enjoy doing projects correctly out of the gate. So even though I've developed this niche of rescuing projects, if you know anybody who wants to do it right from the beginning, please definitely have them give me a call. Let's see. What I really enjoy is creating interesting products that focus on the customer experience. There's a lot of stuff out there that just uses the latest, shiniest stuff because it can, but it doesn't really serve a purpose, or it doesn't meet a customer need. And so I get super excited about working with companies who are trying to solve a customer problem. Let's not do the whiz bang because it's the whiz bang. Let's do it because it's actually adding value. And I'm a part-time van life enthusiast. So what is freelancing? So freelancing, you're going to hear the terms freelancer, contractor, independent consultant, gig worker, there's a lot of different terms that can be used interchangeably, but really what it boils down to is who pays your taxes. If you're employed by a company and they send you a paycheck and they take taxes out of it, you're not a freelancer. If you work and you're responsible for paying your own taxes, you are a freelancer. And that's a really important distinction. I know a bunch of people here from Canada, and Canada's rules are a little more strict about defining what a freelancer is. You have a whole set of checklists, and I actually looked into it. It's kind of interesting how many criteria you have to meet in order to be able to call yourself a freelancer. In the US, if we're 1099, you're a freelancer. So it's a little different. Freelance engagements don't necessarily mean that it's part-time. You can have a full-time engagement. You can have short-term contracts, long-term contracts. It really just depends on how you and your clients have defined the engagement and what you want to do. So really the biggest distinction about being a freelancer is I pay my own taxes. And we'll talk about taxes a few times throughout this presentation, because that's a big one that gets a lot of people. Pay your taxes. Here's my van. This is my mobile office. I am fortunate enough that over the years, I've built my clientele to the point that I can live van life. I can travel around, I can work remotely. But not everybody can do that out of the gate. And so I want to kind of talk through some of the common misconceptions about freelancing. It's a great lifestyle. I recommend everybody do it, but not everybody can do it, or not everybody may be prepared to do it. Do we have anybody here who has freelanced previously? Throw it in the chat. Couple people. Okay. Satellite internet. Actually, no, I use the hotspot for my phone and a cell booster. So your setup is going to depend entirely on where you're at in your location, and if you have a grandfathered unlimited data plan like I do, that really helps. Okay, so we have a few freelancers, which is great. Some of the common misconceptions about a freelancer is, as I alluded to at the beginning, you don't just perform a service and get paid. There's a lot more that goes into it. You have to get a business license depending on where you're at. You have to decide what kind of company you want to start. If you're going to incorporate, I personally have an LLC just because it was easy to set up, and it does protect my personal assets from my professional assets should something go wrong. Not that I would foresee it, but just in case. I know in Canada, you have to meet some provincial requirements to incorporate. So there are some things, local regulations that you need to look at and really understand before you start to freelance. It's more than just, I'm going to write code or I'm going to build a document and get paid for it. Yep, there are definitely a lot of satellite internet out there. I'm just kind of taking a look at the comments as we go too. Some other misconceptions are I can work from anywhere. I am lucky that this is my mobile van. I can go anywhere, but that wasn't always how it was, especially pre-pandemic. Some of my early clients wanted me to be on site. Very much, especially when freelancing on contractors weren't as common. They wanted to make sure that you were actually doing what you said you were doing. So, sometimes you have to be on site. Sometimes you want to work with companies that are in different locations, and you have to be really cognizant about that. I know when I'm traveling and I'm working from anywhere, I have to be careful about how long I stay in certain states, because if I stay for, I think it's more than 2 months in California, I have to pay taxes in California. So there's similar things in Canada with different provincial requirements, that depending on where people are and where your clients are, you may or may not be able to work with them and where you are. I actually have a company in Canada that really wants to do business with me, but I can't because I'm not incorporated in Canada. And I would have to get a partner who is physically located in Canada and incorporate there in order to do business with them. So there's a lot more that goes into it. So yes, you may be able to live the van life and be a freelancer, but there's still some things to consider. You get to set your own hours is a common misconception. So I've been freelancing since 2015, and in the last 2 weeks, I finally have contracts that are structured in the way that I can set my own hours. So it's taken 6 years to create that clientele where that's true. Most clients will want you to be available for office hours. Have a set of core hours where that you can be available and you can answer questions, you can be in meetings. I'm a freelance product manager, so I do a lot of meetings. So I need to be available when my clients and their clients are available. I'm on the phone a lot. If you're a developer or UX designer or something that can be done autonomously, you may have a little more luck in starting off with a bit more of a flexible schedule. But again, not everybody is going to let you set your own hours. So keep that in mind. And call it out in your contract. And we'll talk a little bit more about contracts later as well. Another misconception, I'm going to make more money than I would as an employee. Well, I've got news for you. You might eventually. In the first 24 months that I was a freelancer, I think I worked 9, not consecutively. And it is hard to get gigs when you're starting off. You have to work really, really hard and hustle. Some other things that you have to think about is you pay your own taxes. So depending on how you price yourself, you might be pricing yourself out of a good wage. You have to pay your own medical in the US, which is extremely expensive. You have to pay for all your own office costs and maintenance. That can add up. And yes, a lot of it's in the US especially, we can write it off our taxes, but it's still money. You have to think about that. It's super, super easy to undercut yourself by setting your hourly wage too low that you're not compensating for all of these other responsibilities that your employer would have normally covered. So yeah, you might get to the point where you make more as a freelancer, but I wouldn't plan on it starting out of the gate. Keeping it real. Yep. Let's talk is all about keeping it real. Expectations, you got to manage it. It's easy. Well, kinda. I mean, if you're really good at your job, that part of it's easy, but that part is the teeny tiny fraction of what you're doing. You are now an entire company. You have to market yourself. So you're the marketing team. You have to do your own bookkeeping, or you have to hire somebody. And if you hire somebody, remember that cuts into your income. So again, don't underprice yourself. You have to chase down clients. So now you're in business development and sales. You have to maintain something. If your computer breaks, it's your responsibility to get a new one, and your client doesn't care that it broke. You still have to meet your deadlines and your schedules and delivers. So you're an IT department. You are everything. So you're a one-man show that is going to do everything. An entire company has different organizations to cover. So it's not simple. There's a lot of stuff going on, and just you have to be very comfortable at wearing different hats and switching contexts and making sure that you don't get so tunnel visioned on what you're doing and forget about the rest of the business. Because even if you are just a sole proprietor, very simple freelancer, you're still a business. And your clients expect you to conduct yourself as one. This is a big one. I can manage my time. Can you? This is one of the things that most freelancers underestimate. It takes discipline. Especially if you do get lucky and you can set your own hours, staying on track, working every day, not saving everything into the end. If you're a procrastinator like I am, it's really easy just to sit back and have that extra set of coffee, play with my cats a little bit longer, go out for a morning paddle, and then you hit crunch time. It's like, oh no. The amount of time that it takes for you to do stuff is a lot longer than you think it would be. Because you don't have the support, you don't have the visual cues, you're not going to an office every day. And I think a lot of us have seen this more working from home over the last 18 months or so, that time management when you're at home is hard. There's a lot of distractions. One of the things that I recommend to people is make your calendar your best friend. Schedule everything. Schedule your work time, schedule your free time. Block out time to do stuff so that you know where you're supposed to be, and so your clients know when you're available. It's your calendar will save your life. It'll help you, get in the right headspace. Set aside also a physical area. Mine is it's a corner in my upstairs. It's not even a real office, but it's my work area. So if you have a physical space that you can go to, when you go there, you're working, that just mentally helps you prepare for what you should be doing. And then when you leave, you could just kind of take off that work cap and say, now I'm at home, I'm not working anymore. So time management is big. It's freelancing is awesome. But yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions. These are just a few. I mean, is there anything else that people can think of that's a misconception maybe about freelancing, or for those of you who have freelanced, what got you? Nobody? All right, well, we'll move on. And if you think of anything, throw it in the chat. Let's talk a little bit about types of work. So there's three main categories, at least that I have seen. Hunting for clients. Yes, hunting for clients is very hard. I am one of the worst biz dev people. I think so. That's the hat that I like wearing the least. And we'll talk a little bit about that later as well, about hunting for clients. Scope creep. Yep, I will talk about scope creep later as well. That's another big one. So types of work. There are three main types: project-based, time and materials, and retainer. And they'll kind of sound like they run into each other a little bit, but really the difference between them is how you're going to structure your engagement, your contract, and how you're going to price it. So project-based is typically a fixed price project for a predefined set of deliverables. So if you don't manage your time well and you don't execute efficiently, you're going to undercut yourself, because you're going to get a set amount of money, and no matter how many hours it takes you to complete the project, that's what you're going to get. The way that I typically will price these is I'll use a rough order of magnitude or a ROM calculator that gives me a high and a low range. And then I give that to the client and we agree on a final price. And I've actually included a link to my calculator at the end of this presentation if anybody wants to use it. It's out there on Google Sheets. It's free to anybody to use. But it helps me factor in things like the client grumpiness factor. So are they going to be difficult to work with? Is it a complex project? Do I have a lot of dependencies? How do I price out individual tasks? Or something's going to be recurring. Am I in a meeting every day for half an hour? Well, that's my time that I need to make sure I bill for, and factor that into my overall price. So for project-based, what I would recommend is really spend the time to plan out the project, plan out your tasks, plan out your overhead, and then give a range. And the range is really a formula. It's like minus 25% plus 50 to 75% of what you think your target cost is. And then that's what you would present to your client. Time and materials is what it sounds like. You bill on hours worked. And this is great if you have a not so well-defined set of deliverables, or you're kind of helping your client discover as you go along what needs to happen. A lot of clients will actually take your hourly rate and then set a do not exceed. So you may have a rate of $100 an hour and you can't go over 20 hours a week. And that's a way for the client to protect themselves from padding or overbilling, and also keep it so it's not just a blank check for you. One of the things that I do recommend if you have time and materials, this is one of the ways I love to work because I get paid for all of the hours I work. On the flip side, if you don't work, you don't get paid. So again, back to time management, back to being disciplined. It's better to bill less and bill honestly than to just always bill a flat. Like if you have a 40-hour week contract, always billing for 40 hours a week. You're going to lose credibility if you're not billing actual hours. If your client thinks that you're gaming the system or you're padding your hours, you're going to lose credibility. And that's something very important as a freelancer, is you want to become known as somebody who's trustworthy and somebody who's good to work with. So be honest if you're doing time and materials. If you're not working, don't bill it, but also have that conversation with your client that you can take on more, or maybe this isn't the right engagement. Maybe it's time to cut ties with that engagement and help them bring on somebody who's a little bit better suited. I had a previous engagement where I was working with a client, and I'm a freelance product manager, and what they really needed was a junior project manager. So my hourly rate was like 3 times what they should be paying for the work that I was doing. And I was happy to do it, but I was like, you guys, you could probably find somebody for a lot cheaper to do this. I'm happy to do it. And so what we ended up working out was I transitioned and trained up somebody on their team to take over the things that I was doing. I created a bunch of automated reports for them. And so it was just really easy for them to take on the tasks that I was doing. I got them organized and then let it go. And they really appreciated that, because I could have just sat there for 3 more months and gotten paid. But now I have some goodwill with that company, and it's actually led to another contract. So keep that in mind as a freelancer. Don't you think you can pull the rug on your client? It ends up burning that bridge. That's where the conversation happens. Don't pull the rug on your client, but have a conversation. Be honest, and this comes back to setting and managing expectations, and we can go into a little bit more detail on that later as well. Being open and honest with yourself and your client is the best thing you can do as a freelancer. Don't hide anything. Don't sugarcoat things. Be realistic, and then you're not burning any bridges. Third type of work that I do is retainer work. So retainer work is typically where you are billed a flat fee, or you bill a flat fee regardless of what you actually do. I'm doing this for one of my previous clients who just needs me to be available for questions as they're transitioning. So I'm around for 10 hours a week. They pay me for 10 hours of work, whether I actually do anything for them or not. And that's just basically for being on call. Retainer work doesn't happen a whole lot because clients obviously want you to produce something, but it can happen. Typically, it's something for like a maintenance contract or a handover contract where you've delivered a project and the internal team is taking it on and just wants you to be around in case they have questions. So things to think about when you're deciding what type of work you want to do is retainer work based on product delivery? Usually not. It can be, but usually not. Retainer work is usually based on the client doesn't know what they need. They just want you to be available. And so a lot of times it can turn into a project. It can turn into either a time and materials or a project-based flat rate project, especially if you're good at managing expectations. You can go back and say, this is actually a project, like structure this as price it. Because again, going back to don't take advantage of your clients, because you never know who your next job reference is going to come from. So when you're thinking about types of work, think about choosing your own path. What type of work do you want to do? Do you want to do one full-time client? Do you want to do multiple part-time clients? Do you want to work remotely? Do you want to work on site? Do you want to travel? Do you want to lead a team or just be an individual contributor? How long do you want to stay with a single client? All of these questions, once you sort it out for yourself, will help you decide how you want to approach work and which of these 3 buckets you want to fall into. I hope that makes sense. All right. This is talking a little bit about sales now. So your companies that you're going to will have a thought process. And you need to really put yourself in their mind and say, here's how I'm going to address all of the different decisions that you need to make to decide whether or not to hire me. So they're going to say, should I hire a freelancer? And there's some different questions they're going to ask. Is it essential business? Can it be completed independently? Am I going to save money? So all of these things are going to direct their thoughts on whether or not to hire you. Understand how you fit into their decision tree, and then talk about that when you're talking to a potential client. Proactively remove any roadblocks that they're going to have getting this engagement approved. If you know that they have to go to finance and finance has a strict budget, price yourself accordingly, or help them make a great case. If they're going to have to work with multiple other teams in the company, give them the ammo to talk to those teams to bring you on board so that they're your champion as well. Set them up to succeed. It'll make them easier to say yes at all these decision points. Listen to them. So don't just sell. Listen to their pain points and address their pain points. The end result might be the same. Building an app, say like you're an app developer and you're going to build an app. Great. Don't just say, I can build you a great app. Say, you're having a problem with this customer segment addressing this type of conversion. I can build an app that does this and this and this to help increase your conversion rate over whatever. So talk to them specifically about their pain points and how you are going to address their pain points. Make it personalized. Along with that is have a process. So I have a process that I can show to clients that shows it's like 5 steps where we're going to start with a discovery introduction. We're going to go into scoping. We're going to do a couple of different things. And then at the end of the day, we're going to have a retrospective and we're going to do project close. It's somewhat of a traditional project life cycle, but it's the way that I do things. And I can show this to clients so that they know exactly how they're expected to participate and what's going to be expected from them. Nothing drives a client crazier than you say, yeah, sure, I'll do this, no problem. And it's like, okay, and I need this from you, and this from you, and this from you, and this from you, and this from you. And they were like, wait, what? So have a process that you can present and get agreement to at the beginning so everybody understands what it's going to take to get this done and why. And, be okay with walking away. Part of sales is understanding, especially as a freelancer, is understanding when it's not the right sell. I have talked to people where it's like, yeah, that's not really what I would like to do, or that's not in my wheelhouse, but let me get back to you. I may know a couple people who fit that. If it's not the right fit, don't be afraid to walk away. You do not have to take everything that comes your way as a freelancer. It can be tempting, especially if you're not currently working, but you're better off walking away than having a bad experience. Because if you have a bad attitude or you develop a negative attitude, the client's going to know, and then that is going to get perpetuated in your client's network. So be okay with walking away. And it's nothing personal, it's just not the right fit. So understanding that's really, really important. And kind of the last thing I'll leave you with on the sales side is back off the sales pitch. I know that as a freelancer, we might be tempted to constantly try to sell. We're trying to get new clients. We're trying to get new engagements. If we don't work, we don't make money. So you feel that pressure to do nothing but sell. Back off the sales pitch once in a while and just make connections. So I have focused in this last year really hard on connecting with groups with similar interests as I on LinkedIn and having conversations, posting content, commenting on other people's content, having conversations and making real connections. And I'm getting traction. And that has gotten me more results than the previous 5 years of just sell, sell, sell. So, I think especially right now, we've all been home for a year and a half. People want to make genuine connections. It's no longer the sales pitch. The cool thing about a connection is they're a passive sales channel for you. If you're doing a sales pitch, it's very temporally locked. If it's not the right time or the place and they say no, okay, you're kind of forgotten. If you make a connection and you stay in touch with that connection, they're kind of always passively selling for you. I had a previous client come about because I wished a connection, congratulations on his promotion. And he reached out and went, hey, yeah, thanks, haven't talked to you in a while. I just got pinged by somebody looking for something that you can do. put me in touch with that person. 2 days later, I had a new contract. So you never know. If you make connections, your network will work for you. And sometimes that's just better than always selling. All right, let's talk a little bit about common pitfalls. And we've touched on some of these, but let's just go over a few more. Jumping into a solution without understanding the problem. I see, and I'm not going to try to pick on developers, but I do see developers do this a lot. Oh yeah, I know exactly what I need to build to solve that. It's like, do you understand what the problem is, first of all? Do they really need that? So make sure you listen. Use a little bit of discovery, back off a little bit. We never do that. Of course not. Avoid defining the solution until you really understand the goals of your client. Kind of tied to that is right size the solution. If speed to market is the goal, great. Do an MVP that can be delivered quickly and measured, and you can learn and you can iterate. If you have to operate something at scale, well, then take a little more time. Make sure you have redundancy in monitoring. Don't build a Maserati if they need roller skates. If it's a Band-Aid that's only going to be used for 2 months until a new system gets rolled out, great. Hack something together. Just make sure that you will align the quality and complexity with what you deliver to their goals. They will really appreciate that. I see a lot of people say, I'm going to do this every single time. Well, great. You can probably do it really, really fast, but is that what the client needs? At the end of the day, you need to solve your client's problems, and ultimately you need to work for their customers. So listen to them, understand the problem, and make sure that you're aligning your solutions to what they need. One, I can't tell what those emojis are. This pitfall is something that I see a lot of, underestimating your own value. I don't know how many people I see out there that's like, well, if I go in cheap, I'll get the job. Well, yeah, but you're going in cheap. Why? They're going to, I see a lot of people who hire freelancers. Yeah, some of them are just going to take the cheapest because they really don't care about the end product. They just need something done. And usually it's something that's probably going to get redone 6 or 7 times anyway. So they just don't care. They're trying to find the fastest, cheapest way out of it. Those are not the people I work with. I like to work with the clients who really care about the product and what they're doing. And those type of clients will associate your rate with the quality of your work. So if you come in way under market, you're presenting yourself as somebody who's inexperienced, new, is going to take probably a lot of hand-holding and oversight. If you come in at a reasonable market rate, you'll be seen more as a subject matter expert and somebody who's a leader in your field, and they know they can hire without much hand-holding. It's a weird perception thing, and it may or may not be true depending on the freelancer, but don't underestimate your own value. I have a little formula that I do is I take my target annual salary at about 30% for operating costs, convert that to an hourly rate, and then set a range of plus or minus 10%. And then I ask for the high. So start high. You can always negotiate down. You can never negotiate up. And you'd be surprised. If you don't ask for it, you don't know what you're going to get. So you'd be surprised what people are willing to pay. So don't underestimate your own value. Boundaries. Boundaries is also a problem for a lot of people. Freelancers, especially new freelancers, will fall into the trap of working 24/7. If you work a lot, you get paid a lot. Maybe you don't have great time management, maybe you overcommitted, but that whole working 24/7, and then they burn out and they hate it. Set boundaries for yourself and your clients. If your client needs you to be available during certain hours, great. Agree on those hours and work during those hours, and turn off your notifications outside those hours. Set your own personal boundaries. Say, I'm going to block out my calendar and I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to eat with my family, or maybe you have a client in a different time zone and you do have to work after normal business hours. Set those boundaries with your family or your housemates or whomever you live with. I have to work. When I'm in this space, I am working. So set your own boundaries. It'll keep you sane, trust me. Turning off notifications is probably the best thing I've done as a freelancer, and I did it about 3 years ago. And it allows me to say, okay, I have to actively go in and look at my email and my chats and what have you in order to be distracted by them. If I don't get the pings, I don't see it, I don't stress, I don't care. That's my own little personal boundaries. So making sure that everybody understands your boundaries and use your calendar. Managing expectations. This is big, so I'm gonna actually do an entire slide on this. This is one of my cats, by the way. Isn't she cute? Managing expectations is something that is difficult for a lot of people, especially somebody like me who's an introvert, who just wants to make everybody happy, freelancers as well. It's hard to say no. It's hard to set boundaries. It's hard to be realistic about what's going on because, again, as a freelancer, you're constantly feeling pressured to make the client happy. Because if you don't make the client happy, you may not, her name is Callie, you may not get that referral, you may not get that next gig. The exact opposite is actually true. Clients do not want to be surprised by bad news. Clients will appreciate you more if you are very open and honest with them and set expectations about what they're going to get up front than if you surprise them later. If they want you to build the moon and they've got a tiny budget, set expectations that they're not going to get the moon, but here we can get you a moon rock, and here's what it would take to get the rest of the moon. So set expectations. Over communicate. Over communicating is one of my key tools. I tell them everything. I give status at least weekly, sometimes daily, depending on the project and depending on the client and what's going on. Lay everything out. Be concise and factual, but don't sugarcoat anything. If something's going sideways, say something's going sideways, but be solution oriented. Say, I'm going to flag this now. Here's our drop dead date. If we miss our drop dead date, then these are the consequences and here's what's going to happen to the project. Your clients love to see that type of information because it makes them feel in control. And the more that they can feel in control and proactively address problems, then just the better off the entire project's going to go in your relationship. Tell your clients what you need from them in order to be successful. I see freelancers kind of just go in and heads down and assume that once they make the sell and they're going to do their project, they just heads down and do their thing. But chances are you need something from your clients. You need information, you need documentation, you need access to systems, you need different things from them. You need them to be available, or you need a resource to be available to pass on knowledge. Tell them. If you don't tell them, they don't know. And the more time you're going to spend, and then you're going to end up padding hours, and it's going to become a bad relationship. So tell them what they need to do. They'll be more than happy to help you out. Everybody wants to be successful. Maintain your self-awareness. If you do find yourself going down that rabbit hole, acknowledge it. Along the lines is if something's not going right, speak up. Your client can't help you change something if they don't know about it. And avoiding the sunk cost trap is part of that. So a lot of times we just want to please and we want to spend a lot of time on something. And once we've spent a certain amount of time on it, it's like, okay, I just have to heads down and plow through this because I've already spent so long on this solution. But if it's the wrong solution, sometimes it's better just to put your hand up and say, look, we need to change directions. This just is not going to work. It's a hard discussion to have, but your clients will appreciate you saying, hey, I don't think this is going to work to solve the original problem. Let's come up with a new plan and let's execute on the new plan. So being self-aware is really important. Something that people don't think about is in order to manage expectations, it's really helpful to be familiar with other disciplines. If you know more about what happens outside of your specialty, the more you can help manage expectations and communications across teams. So as a product manager, I need to be aware that if a developer says they're going to make this tiny change and it's 2 hours of work, what does that mean on sales? What does that mean to the UX? What does that mean in other areas of the organization? So I can translate, oh, well, if UX makes a 2-line change, it's 6 more weeks of development, because that 2-line change actually means re-architecting the entire solution. That's big. And I wouldn't know that if I was not familiar with other disciplines. If all I knew was product backlogs and schedules, I wouldn't be able to point out these potential conflicts early on. So raise awareness about other disciplines and really understand the entire picture. That will make you a better freelancer. And that'll make you more valuable to your clients. That'll make you known as somebody who is not only really good at what they do, but is a really good team player and somebody who's going to help your business overall. So that's something that I would recommend. I think, yep. Final thoughts. Freelancing is fun. It's hard. It's not all puppy dogs and unicorns, but it's great once you get into it. Just stay positive. You're probably not going to get your dream gig right out the gate, but be open. You never know what's out there. So just keep trying, make those honest connections, use your network, let your network work passively for you. If you can freelance and you're able to make a go at it, it's great. I love the lifestyle. I love the experience. I love being my own boss and being able to work on tons of different projects and meet a lot of people. But do be realistic. Go into it with your eyes open and understand that you have to plan. You have to plan for the droughts. You have to plan as if you're an entire organization. It's awesome, but it's also real. So that is all I had for you. I do have a slide with my resources. If Navi, if you can post these later. I found some really cool tax calculators in Canada for those of you who are Canadian, to help you kind of think about what it's going to cost you as a freelancer. ROM calculator, this is the one I did, and I found a neat article on crafting an elevator pitch. We didn't talk about this too much, but as a part of sales, have your elevator pitch, and mine is awful, and I'm still crafting it. I've been crafting it for 6 years, and I'm still working on it. So it's something that's hard to do, but if you can get it down, it can be really, really helpful. And yeah, connect with me. I love talking about freelancing. I love talking about van life, product management. Connect. Let's have a conversation. Let's make a real connection. You never know. We might end up working together.
Absolutely. Wow, Carrie, that was so good. Yeah. Are you open to having a Q&A?
Absolutely. I'd love to. Okay. And if I missed your question during the presentation, I apologize. So.
Yeah, I think that you touched on, what I loved about this talk is, do you mind if we just maybe open up the gallery and if anyone wants to just kind of jump in?
Absolutely.
I'm just going to change the view to gallery and then maybe stop sharing this your screen. And I'm going to drop all of Carrie's links in the current event channel. Carrie, thank you for the resources for the Canadian tax calculator. We are a global community. A lot of our devs are in the States as well and all across the world. So I appreciate that. I'm going to try to see if I can find some resources for the States. But yeah, I personally find freelancing is one of those things that you're right. It's really hard because you're as one person, you are an entire company. You're learning and even when you have a project management experience, but as a developer, you're also a project manager. So you're a project manager, you're a lawyer because you're going through contracts, and that actually, like, it teaches you, like, what I enjoyed about it so much is that it teaches you so many different disciplines, like you said, right? Like it teaches you how to interact with these decision makers. So you just kind of become that much better when you're working under an organization, how to interact with product managers, how to interact with UX, UI, what are the goals of salespeople and the sales organization inside of a company. And actually it makes you a killer negotiator as well.
It does. Yeah, and don't, one of the things I was going to touch on is don't feel like you have to reinvent the wheel for all of these other disciplines. Google's your friend. There are so many resources out there that are available for contracts, for pricing, for addendums, for all of these things that have been legally vetted. A lot of it's boilerplate. So beg, borrow, and steal. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, but do make sure that everything you put in your contract is what you want to deliver. Or I should say, put everything in your contract and how you want to work and how you want to deliver. Contracts are your friend.
Yeah, absolutely. There were a few questions. I want to go back to them. Kathy actually has been asking if you could share your website. And used to seeing a lot of individual portfolios, but not so many company portfolios. And she sent that to me direct message. And I think there was another really good question that came a little bit earlier, which was how to get that first client. And that's kind of where a lot of our devs are at as well. It's just like, and that's the same almost system that they're facing when it comes to the company side. It's like getting that first job, and I advocate like go for freelancing because that's a little bit easier. But then you're still running into the same issues. So what are your tips on getting that first client?
So I've been fortunate that all of my clients have been through word of mouth. I have not gotten any through proactive sales or through applying to positions. So getting that first client, it's really working your network, working the people you know, finding people who are at places that you'd like to work with, and just reaching out and using people that you know to land that first gig. Maybe try something pro bono. If you're a developer or you can produce something, produce a portfolio, produce something you can show. That really, really helps clients understand what you can do. And then just network. Networking is hard, but networking is so important.
Yeah, I know that word gets thrown a lot around a lot, but I think it has a lot of misconceptions as well.
It does. And by networking, I don't mean, going to the networking events and spending, 3 minutes shaking everybody's hand, and trying to do that for an hour. Like I said, I join groups with interests that are similar to yours. I'm in a lot of groups about AR and MR. I'm in groups that are talking about accessibility, things that really excite me, and I'm participating in conversations. And that's what I mean about networking, is participate in the community you want to be in, and you will find positions there. It happens organically. And do apply, definitely. Get out there, get on the job boards, look for remote work, look for remote.co is a great site for remote work. We Work Remotely is another one. So Slack community, yep, absolutely. Joining these groups is where you're going to find your first job, most likely. If it's not somebody you previously knew, maybe if you're coming right out of school, maybe it's a professor. It wasn't a freelancing job, but one of my first jobs out of college was actually from my professor. So you never know.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I actually have a couple of insights and tips on that as well, because I've done the whole freelancing gig, and I used to be really shy when it came to just talking to people. But you have to overcome that. But you find your own path. You don't have to become the loudest person in the room, but you find your own path. Like I said, it gives you a lot of strengths. And of course, reach out to the school institution that you graduated from, right? The instructors. Sometimes they have a lot of pro bono opportunities, like you mentioned. And what Kathy said was Slack groups. Even founder groups, because it's like going to other developer groups, they might not have opportunities for you, but if you go to founder groups, guess what? They might be looking for someone with development experience, and maybe they don't have enough resources to bring on someone full time, and are looking to maybe take a cheaper route, and you're a really good option. So founder groups on Slack, founder groups on Facebook, LinkedIn groups, I feel like they're just not as active for some reason. I don't know if anyone.
It depends. I find some that are really active and some that aren't. Discord is also another area, especially for the technically minded.
That's fair. That's fair. And also there's, I don't know if a lot of you guys are part of accelerator groups or so VCs. And just like if you can get your way in, they have tons and tons and tons of startups that always need, a freelancer to work on a project. So there's that.
And look for a mentor. I do a fair amount of mentoring across the UW, across a couple of other 401k groups, 403c volunteer groups. And so look for a mentor. Mentors have connections as well. And they can help you not only on your own personal journey, but putting you in touch with other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us some of your mentors. Like is that how you got into freelancing?
No, I was a freelancer before I started mentoring. And I think I told my first volunteer that I just kind of wanted to use my powers for good. And I love freelancing. I love the product space. I love designing really cool products. And I volunteered to help a dance company up in Capitol Hill through their digital transformation. I've mentored a couple of groups at the UW who are looking at accelerators. I've participated on pitch boards for students coming out of the UW who are pitching their companies. I've done just kind of a lot of different random stuff, but I've mentored a couple of different individuals who are just curious about the freelance space or curious about how to get into product and program management coming from other disciplines and wanted to learn more about what things they should learn. And so I've done a whole lot of different types of mentoring, and it's really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great way to solidify some of your own skills. As you were saying that, something kind of, I just kind of sort of had an idea where to find more opportunities as freelancers. Sometimes like nonprofits where you volunteer your time, and the people who work inside of nonprofits tend to be from other organizations. So sometimes like when you're giving your time to, like Code for America or just other organizations, they have their own, so the people that you meet there, they become your passive network. And they're able to kind of be like, oh yeah, I met Carrie and she's great. And she would like, there's a project coming up and like, she would be a great fit. And then that ball gets rolled in terms of just kind of like that conversation gets started rolling, not rolled.
Yep.
Okay, let's take a look at chat. I feel like we are missing on a few interesting conversations over here. How are clients' view on taking freelancers from outside of their country, smaller countries?
It depends a lot on immigration laws. So in the US, we can't take freelancers directly from other countries because of our immigration laws. Now, coming from within the EU, it's a little bit easier just because of the way the work permits are structured. Take a look at your country, take a look at your target country, and try to investigate a little bit on their work permit laws to determine if that's a country you should target or not. It's going to vary country to country.
How does I freelanced without Upwork. How does Upwork work? I don't know the details. So if I was like, I don't know, in India and I put myself on Upwork, would I still be able to engage with a Canadian company or an American company?
I've stayed away from Upwork for various personal reasons, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure how something like that would work. And it's going to depend on the company too. And I know certain companies, based on the way that they have done their own sponsorship of foreign workers, have to maintain certain levels so that they can maintain sponsorship. So I think it's going to depend on the country and depend on the company as well.
Interesting. It might, that's an interesting question. I'm going to look into this.
Yeah.
I wonder what the rules are for individual, like if it's an individual engagement, like if it's a smaller company looking to hire a freelancer, it's like, you know, a startup of one person or a couple of people in there. What's that site called for freelancers that are for design? Starts with a perfect. It's not coming to me right now. But coming back to the questions here, I'm looking for work. I'm looking forward to working on something that's based in the US, Canada, UK to build my connection around here. Awesome. Adrian saying, Carrie, I'm curious to know if you have any personal thoughts, feelings about specific disadvantages from working a typical 9-to-5 company job.
It's personal. It's really what your own personal preference is. If you work a standard 9-to-5 as an employee, you have stability, you have structure, you have, I guess, just more of that comfort. And typically you would also have a career path that's built in for you. In your freelancer, all of that is driven by yourself. So it really is kind of your own personal preference and how you prefer to work. A middle ground that I would say, if you're not ready to bite off the freelance full time on your own, is work for a placement agency or a contracting agency. You know, so you will be an employee for the agency, but they will place you in positions with different companies. And so it's kind of a way to get your feet wet with a little bit more stability and a little bit more of a cushion and a safety net than going 100% on your own, just to see if you like that gig work, that project work.
That's a really good idea. Yeah, to kind of to just get exposure to it. I didn't think of that at all. So thank you for that. And Fran, it was Fiverr. So yeah. Awesome. I think were there any other insights that maybe somebody else wants to jump on audio or video? Feel free to do so.
This was my first public speaking engagement. So thank you everybody for bearing with me as I worked out my nerves. I appreciate it.
You were great. You were great.
If I could, hi, Carrie.
Hi.
Nice to see you. It's been a while. I wanted to reiterate what Navi said. If y'all are looking for freelance kind of work, plug yourselves into the local accelerator-based entrepreneurial kinds of environments. The companies and often the programs themselves are looking for people to do, you know, like let's say Techstars, for example. They hire, they call hack stars, I think they used to call it that anyway, that were just there to do graphic arts, illustrations, development work, UI design, project management on staff for the companies that are in the accelerator cohort. And that's a great way to get your brand out there, because very often those people end up getting hired by one of those companies after the program is done. But it also gets you exposed to a whole lot of different kind of companies. And so that's pretty exciting, see what kind of new stuff's out there that you like.
Definitely.
Yeah, Techstars, having gone through that program myself, cannot recommend that one enough. If you can get yourself hooked into there, that's a really good source of lots and lots of contracts.
Perfect. Yeah.
Good job, Carrie.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. No, it's true. Like you just, you know, sometimes like attaching yourself to a group that you know is full of like other entrepreneurs or startups. And you know, if they get funding, they'll pick you up. So yeah, great point, Stephen.
Absolutely.
I think, Rico, did you want to jump in? I think we are maybe not able to hear you as that well.
No, I didn't have anything. Sorry about that.
Okay,
All right.
no worries. No worries. Awesome. Yeah, I think we're at time and looks like we might be out of questions as well. So Carrie, I think you did a fantastic job. If this was your first speaking gig, I wouldn't have known about it with just how fantastic you were. I thought you've honestly done this before. So you were great. I guess this goes back to, you know, your experience as a project manager and how well you execute things. So thank you so much for sharing your time and just your insights with us. Well, I did want to make a quick announcement before we leave. I wanted to mention that the hiring hackathon is coming up on Tuesday. So just a couple more days. It's insane. Just the amount of traction that it's gotten. We're almost at 700 registrations. Super, super, super excited about it. There's a lot that's going to happen next week and lots of panels, lots of guests, and I'm super excited for it. So yeah, it's a great way to end Friday, and I hope you guys enjoy the weekend. Carrie, once again, thank you so much for being here today and just sharing your knowledge.
My pleasure. Connect with me, everybody. And if you want to talk van life or freelancing, I'd be happy to do both.
Perfect. I'm going to drop the resources in the current event channel. So
great. Thank you so much, guys.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye all.